They tricked me into signing, but I tricked them first. I woke up that morning with a knot in my stomach. At 73 years old, I'd learned to trust my instincts, and something told me this Sunday would not be like the others. I rose slowly from our bed, the same one I had shared with Charles for 48 years, until he passed 2 years ago, leaving me alone in this 3-bedroom apartment in our quiet neighborhood. The morning light filtered shyly through the floral curtains I had sewn myself a decade ago. My hands, wrinkled but still skilled, gripped the edge of the dresser as I stood up. My knees creaked slightly, a little reminder that the years don't pass for nothing, but my mind was as sharp as ever, maybe too sharp for my own good. I walked to the kitchen, my slippers scuffing against the hardwood floor Charles had installed when we moved in 30 years ago. Everything in this house had a story. Every corner held a memory. The scuff mark on the wall where Michael had hit it with his tricycle when he was 4. The paint smudge on the ceiling that Robert had left when he helped remodel the living room as a teenager. The small window garden where Linda had planted her first flowers in elementary school. I prepared my morning coffee, a ritual I've kept since I was a young woman. A spoonful of sugar, a splash of milk. Charles always joked that I could make the best coffee in the world with cheap ingredients. "It's not the coffee, my love," I would tell him. "It's the hands that prepare it." The phone rang as I slowly stirred the steaming drink. I glanced at the kitchen clock, 7:30 in the morning. It was early, even for a Sunday. My children never called this early unless something was wrong. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Mom, it's Robert." My eldest son's voice sounded different, more formal than usual. Robert worked as a lawyer at a downtown firm and had always been the most serious of my 3 children. Even as a boy, he had a way of speaking that sounded like he was presenting a case before a judge. "Good morning, sweetie. Is everything all right? It's very early to call." "Yes, Mom, everything is fine. Listen, I need to talk to you about something important. Linda, Michael, and I are going to visit you this afternoon. Can you be home at 2? I frowned. My 3 children together, at my house, at the same time. That hadn't happened since Charles's funeral, and before that, I couldn't remember the last time. They usually visited separately, and only on special occasions like my birthday or Mother's Day. "All 3 of you? Is something going on that I should know about?" "Don't worry, Mom. We just want to talk about a few things. It's important that you stay calm, okay?" That phrase made me more nervous. When someone tells you to stay calm before you have a reason to worry, it usually means you should start worrying. "Robert, you know you can tell me anything. What is this about?" "We'll talk when we get there, Mom. Just keep an open mind, okay? We love you very much, and we want what's best for you." After hanging up, I stood in the kitchen, holding the phone in my hand for several minutes. I knew my children better than anyone in this world. I had raised them, for many years practically alone, while Charles worked long hours at the factory to keep the family afloat. I had been there for every fever, every nightmare, every broken heart, every triumph, big and small. Robert, my firstborn, arrived when I was barely 20. A difficult pregnancy had kept me in bed for the last 3 months. But when I held him in my arms for the first time, I knew I would do anything for him. Robert had always been the responsible one, the one who looked after his younger siblings, the one who got the best grades in school. But he was also the most emotionally distant, as if he felt that expressing feelings was a weakness. Linda came 3 years later, my only daughter, the girl I had dreamed of having so I could teach her all the things my own mother hadn't been able to teach me. Linda was sweet but impatient, affectionate but practical, almost to the point of being cold at times. She worked at a bank and had developed a mindset that everything in life could be solved with numbers and planning. Michael was the baby of the family, 7 years younger than Robert. The most emotional of the 3, the one who still hugged me when he said goodbye, the one who called just to ask how my day had been. But he was also the most easily influenced, always going along with whatever his older siblings decided. I finished my coffee and went to the bathroom to take a shower. As the hot water ran over my tense shoulders, I couldn't get Robert's tone of voice out of my head. There was something final in the way he had spoken, as if a decision had already been made, and he was just coming to inform me of it. I dressed carefully. Choosing the blue dress Charles always said made my eyes look brighter. I combed my gray hair, which I no longer had the energy to dye every month like I used to. I put on a little makeup, not because I was vain, but because keeping certain routines made me feel like I still had control over my life. The rest of the morning passed slowly. I tried to keep busy by cleaning the already spotless house, organizing papers that were already organized, and cooking a lunch I knew I probably wouldn't eat because of my nerves. Every time I looked at the clock, the hands seemed to have barely moved. At 11 in the morning, the phone rang again. This time it was Linda. "Hi, Mom. I just wanted to confirm you'll be home at 2. Robert asked me to call you." "Yes, honey, I'll be here." "Linda, can you tell me what this is all about? You have me worried." Linda sighed on the other end of the line. "Mom, it's for your own good. We've been talking, and, well, you can't live alone anymore. Last month you fell. Last week you forgot to turn off the gas stove. These are signs, Mom." I felt my heart race. "Signs of what?" "That you need more care than you can give yourself. Look, I don't want to discuss this over the phone. We'll talk when we get there, okay?" "Linda, wait, don't hang up." But the line was already dead. I stared at the phone as if it were a foreign object. That I couldn't live alone? Since when had my children decided that? And more importantly, why had they decided it without even asking my opinion? It was true that last month I had tripped coming down the building stairs. But that was because the janitor had left a box on the landing and I hadn't seen it in the dim light. It wasn't because of a lack of balance or coordination. And the gas stove? Well, that could happen to anyone. I had been worried because Michael was having trouble at work and I got distracted. But to go from that to saying I couldn't take care of myself, there was a huge leap. I sat in my favorite chair, a brown recliner that Charles had given me on our last anniversary. From there, I could see the entire living room, with the family photos carefully arranged on the shelves, the books I had read and reread, the television where I watched my favorite shows, and the table where I had dined with my family for decades. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine what it would be like not to have all this. Where did they want to take me? To a nursing home? To live with one of them? The idea caused a mix of panic and sadness I hadn't felt since Charles died. At 1 in the afternoon, I couldn't take the anxiety anymore. I went to my room and opened the bottom drawer of my dresser where I kept my important documents. There was the deed to the apartment, the papers that proved this place was mine. There were also the papers for Charles's life insurance, our marriage certificate, my children's birth certificates. Everything was in order. As I had always kept my things, I had learned from a young age the importance of keeping papers organized and up to date. My own mother had passed away without leaving anything clear, and I remembered the headache it had been to resolve all the legal matters. While reviewing the documents, I found a letter that Charles had written to me shortly before he died. I had read it hundreds of times, but I took it out again. In a shaky hand, Charles had written, "My dearest Eleanor, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you, but I want you to know that I have never loved you more than I do now. You have been the best wife, the best mother, the best partner a man could ask for. You took care of me when I was sick without a single complaint. You gave me 3 wonderful children. You built a life with me that I am proud of. I know our children will want to take care of you when I'm gone, but remember that you are a strong and independent woman. Don't let anyone, not even them, decide for you what is best for your life. This house is yours. This life is yours. Make your own decisions. I love you forever, Charles." I clutched the letter to my chest and felt tears begin to well up. Charles was right. As always, I was a strong woman. I had raised 3 children practically on my own while he worked. I had managed the household finances. I had made important decisions about the children's education, about major purchases, about everything involved in keeping a family together. Why now, just because I was 73, did my children think I couldn't decide about my own life? The doorbell rang at exactly 2 in the afternoon. I put away Charles's letter, wiped my tears, and went to open the door. Robert stood on the threshold, dressed in an impeccable gray suit, as if he had just come from the office. He held a black leather briefcase in one hand and a serious expression on his face. "Hi, Mom," he said, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek. Behind him were Linda and Michael. Linda wore a stylish outfit and carried a large purse. Michael wore a dress shirt and looked uncomfortable, as if he would rather be anywhere else. Come in," I said, trying to maintain a normal tone. "Do you want coffee, water, something to eat?" "No, Mom, thank you," Robert replied as he entered the living room. "We need to talk." The 3 of them sat on the sofa, forming a kind of semicircle in front of my chair. I felt like I was on trial, with my own children as the judges. Robert opened his briefcase and took out a thick manila folder. "Mom, please sit down." I obeyed, feeling my heart begin to beat faster. "We have been talking among ourselves about your situation," Robert began in a formal voice, as if addressing a client, "and we have come to the conclusion that it is no longer safe for you to live alone." I opened my mouth to protest, but Robert raised his hand to stop me. "Let me finish, please. Last month you fell on the stairs. 2 weeks ago, Linda had to come over because you forgot to turn off the gas. Last week, the next-door neighbor called us because you had the music on very loud until late, which you never do, leading us to believe you're forgetting to turn it off." "That's not true," I protested. "I never—" "Mom," Linda interrupted. "We've also noticed that you sometimes repeat the same stories when we talk on the phone. And the other day you couldn't remember if you had taken your medication." I felt as if I had been slapped. "Since when have you been keeping a record of everything I do wrong?" Michael shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "It's not that, Mom. We're just worried about you." "Look," Robert continued, "we've found a perfect solution. There's a very good assisted living facility about 20 blocks from here. It's called The Willows. We went to visit it last week, and it's beautiful. It has gardens, activities for the residents, 24-hour nurses, meals included. You'll be very well taken care of." I felt my world collapsing. A facility. They wanted to send me to a home for the elderly. "No," I said, my voice trembling. "I don't want to go to any facility." Linda leaned forward. "Mom, you don't have a choice. You can't take care of yourself anymore, and none of us can move in with you or have you live with us. Robert has his family. I have my job that requires a lot of travel. And Michael has his own life too," Michael finished, looking at the floor. I looked at my 3 children as if seeing them for the first time. These were the people I had raised. Fed when they were sick, comforted when they cried, applauded at every graduation, every achievement, every important moment of their lives. And what if I don't want to go? Robert sighed and opened the folder. "Mom, we've already made the decision. Look, I have all the papers ready here. We just need you to sign to authorize your admission to the facility, and so we can sell this apartment." "Sell the apartment?" I stood up abruptly. "This is my home. You were born here. Your father died here. All my memories are here." "You take the memories with you," Linda said with that practical voice she used when talking about finances at the bank. "Mom, be realistic. This apartment is too big for you alone. The maintenance costs are high. With the money from the sale, we can pay for the facility for several years." I realized they had it all planned. They hadn't come to consult me. They had come to inform me of a decision they had already made. "How long have you been planning this?" The 3 of them exchanged glances. "Since Dad died," Robert finally admitted. "We knew you would eventually need more care." "Eventually? It's only been 2 years. 2 years you've been alone, Mom," Linda said. 2 years we've been worried about you every day." I walked to the window and looked out at the street where I had lived for 30 years. I knew all the neighbors. I knew which days the garbage truck came, what hours the neighborhood stores opened. This was my life, my routine, my world. "You visited the facility without telling me?" "We wanted to make sure it was a good place before mentioning it to you," Michael explained. I turned to face them. "And it didn't occur to you that maybe I would want to go with you to see it? That maybe I would want to have a say in the place where you're going to send me to spend the rest of my life?" Robert began to show signs of impatience. "Mom, we're not sending you anywhere. We're taking you to a place where you'll be safe and well cared for." "But you're not safe here," Linda insisted. "Mom, you're 73 years old. What if you fall and break a hip? What if you have a health problem in the middle of the night? What if—" I raised my hand to stop her. "What if I just want to live my life in peace, in my own home?" Silence filled the room. I could hear the ticking of the wall clock that Charles had bought on their first Christmas as a married couple. I could hear the familiar noises of the building. The lady in the upstairs apartment walking around, the elevator going up and down, the children playing in the courtyard. Robert cleared his throat. "Mom, we've already made all the arrangements. The facility has a very long waiting list, but we managed to get you a spot. If we don't take it now, you might be left with no options. And what if I don't want to take that option?" "You don't have other options," Robert said firmly. I looked at Michael, hoping that he, my most sensitive child, would say something in my defense. But Michael avoided eye contact with me. "Michael," I said softly, "do you also think I should leave my home?" Michael finally looked up. His eyes were moist. "Mom, we don't want you to leave, but we also don't want anything bad to happen to you. And it hasn't occurred to you that maybe you could help me stay here? Hire someone to come clean once a week? Install a medical alert system? Call me more often?" Linda shook her head. "That would be very expensive, Mom. And it wouldn't solve the main problem." "What is the main problem?" "That you're alone," Robert said. "And the longer you're alone, the worse it will get." I felt the room start to spin. All my life, I had been the strong woman of the family. When Charles lost his job during the recession in the 82nds, I had found work as a seamstress to keep the family finances afloat. When Robert had problems in college, I had spoken to the professors and gotten him a second chance. When Linda went through her divorce, I had taken care of my grandchildren for months. When Michael had his car accident, I had spent entire days at the hospital with him. And now these same children were telling me I couldn't take care of myself. If this story is touching your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more real stories like this, and share it with someone who needs to remember the value of listening to our elders. Your support allows us to continue bringing you these soul-touching stories. Robert extended the papers toward me. "Mom, I need you to sign these documents. Here, where the yellow tabs are." I looked at the papers. The letters seemed to dance before my eyes, not because of vision problems, but because of the tears that threatened to fall. "Can I read them first?" Robert checked his watch. "They're very technical documents, Mom. They basically authorize your admission to the facility and give us power of attorney to sell the apartment and handle the legal proceedings. But I want to read them." Linda sighed impatiently. "Mom, it's 4 in the afternoon. The kids have extracurricular activities. Robert has to prepare a case for tomorrow, and I have an early presentation. Can we speed this up?" I looked at my daughter in disbelief. "Speed this up? Linda, we're talking about my life." "Precisely, which is why we need you to sign," Linda said, "to secure your life." I took the papers with trembling hands. There were at least 10 pages, filled with legal terms I didn't fully understand. But one thing I did understand. They were doing this without my real consent. They were pressuring me to sign something that would change my entire life, and they didn't even have the patience to let me read what I was signing. When would I have to leave? "Next Saturday," Robert replied. "We've already scheduled the move." "You already scheduled the move?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Without asking me?" "We wanted to have everything ready to make it as easy as possible for you," Michael explained. I got up and walked to the shelf where I kept the family photos. There was my wedding photo, young and radiant, full of hope for the future we would build together. The photos of my children when they were little, with those toothless smiles and innocence in their eyes. The photos of graduations, birthdays, Christmases, all the occasions when we had been a happy family. "Do you know what hurts the most about all this?" I said without turning around. "It's not that you want to send me to a home. It's that you decided it without me. You've completely excluded me from a decision that will change my life forever." Robert stood up. "Mom, we haven't excluded you. We're including you now." I turned to face him. "No, Robert, you're informing me. There's a very big difference." "What's the difference?" Linda asked. "When you include someone in a decision, you give them the chance to say no." The silence filled the room again. I could feel the tension in the air, like a thunderstorm about to break. "Mom," Michael said softly, "what do you want us to do? We can't rest easy knowing you're here alone." I looked at my youngest son, the one who had always been more sensitive than his siblings. "Michael, do you remember when you were 8 and your dog got lost?" Michael nodded, confused by the change of subject. "You wanted to go look for him alone, but I told you it was dangerous. Do you remember what you told me?" "No." "You told me, Mom, it's my dog. I know where to look." "And you were right. You eventually found him under the neighbor's porch, in the exact spot you said he might be." Michael frowned, not understanding where I was going with this. "This is my life, Michael. I know where to look for my happiness. And it's not in a facility surrounded by strangers." Linda stood up abruptly. "Mom, this is not a comparable situation. You were an adult when Michael was 8. Now what? Now I'm a child? Now you're an elderly person who needs special care?" Linda said with that condescending voice I had learned to hate. I walked back to my chair and sat down slowly. I looked at my 3 children, these adults my babies had become, and I felt a deep sadness that wasn't just about the decision they wanted to impose on me, but about the distance that had grown between us. "Do you know what hurts the most?" I asked with a broken voice. "That you, who were raised by a woman who always respected you, who always listened to you, who always included you in important family decisions, are not giving me the same respect." Robert sat down again and adopted a softer tone. "Mom, we respect you. That's why we want to take care of you." "No, Robert. Taking care of someone means making sure they're okay. Respecting them means including them in decisions about their own life." I took the papers and began to skim them slowly. I could feel my children's impatience. I could see Robert checking his watch every few minutes, Linda drumming her fingers on her purse, Michael shifting uncomfortably in his seat. "Did you visit other facilities or just this one?" "Just this one," Linda admitted. "But we did a lot of research. It has excellent references." "And how much does it cost?" Robert mentioned a figure that made my eyes widen. It was almost 3 times what I spent monthly living in my own apartment. "And how are you going to pay for that?" "With the money from the sale of the apartment," Robert explained. "And if that runs out, the 3 of us can cover the difference." I realized they had everything calculated. They had done the numbers. They had evaluated the options. They had made all the practical decisions. The only thing they hadn't done was ask me what I wanted. And what if I said no? The 3 of them looked at me as if I had said something absurd. "Mom," Robert said with forced patience, "that's not an option." "Why not?" "Because you can't keep living alone," Linda repeated as if it were an obvious truth. "And who decided that?" "Reality," Robert said. "The facts. Your age, your situation, the incidents you've had." I stood up again and walked to the kitchen. My children followed me, forming a small procession through the apartment. "I want to show you something," I said. I opened the refrigerator, which was perfectly organized and clean. I opened the cabinets, where all the plates and glasses were in their place. I opened the oven, which was spotless. "Is this the kitchen of a person who can't take care of herself?" "Mom," Linda began, but I interrupted her. "Now come with me." I took them to the bathroom, which was clean and tidy, then to my room, where the bed was made and the clothes were folded in the closet. "Do you see anything here that indicates I can't take care of myself?" Michael looked uncomfortable. "Mom, it's not just the apartment, it's your safety." "My safety," I repeated the words slowly. "Do you know what makes me feel unsafe? That my own children have decided my future without consulting me." We returned to the living room, where the papers were still waiting on the dining table. I sat down again and looked at the documents. There was a line for my signature on each page, marked with a yellow highlighter to make it easy to find. "Do you have a pen?" I finally asked. Robert rushed to give me an expensive silver metal pen. "Here, Mom, just sign where the yellow tabs are." I took the pen and held it over the first document. I could feel my children's expectation, their relief that I was finally going to cooperate. But before signing, I looked up and met each of my children's eyes. "I want you to know something," I said in a firm voice. "For 73 years, I have made my own decisions. I decided to marry your father when everyone told me I was too young. I decided to have you when we didn't have much money. I decided to work when your father was laid off. I decided to take care of your father at home when he got sick, even though the doctors told me it would be easier to take him to a hospital." My children listened in silence. I made all those decisions, always thinking about what was best for my family. No one ever forced me to do something I didn't want to do. And now you are trying to force me to do something I don't want to do. I looked at the papers again. My hand trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from the emotion that overwhelmed me. "But you are my children, and even though I don't agree with what you are doing, even though it hurts me that you didn't respect me enough to include me in this decision from the beginning, I am going to sign these papers." Robert smiled with relief. "Thanks, Mom. You'll see it's for the best." I nodded slowly. "Maybe you're right. Maybe it is for the best." With a careful but steady hand, I began to write my name on the first yellow tab. Eleanor Rodriguez. But next to my signature, I added something else. Something I wrote in small but legible print, signed under duress. Robert was putting other documents in his briefcase and didn't pay attention to what I was writing. Linda was checking her phone, answering work messages. Michael was looking out the window, clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation. I turned to the second page and signed again. And again, I added my extra words next to the signature. Page after page, I continued the same pattern. I signed my name where they had indicated, but each time I added something more. My children, anxious to finish the process and relieved that I was finally cooperating, didn't bother to check what I was writing. When I signed the last page, I closed the folder and handed it back to Robert. Done, I said simply. Robert took the folder without even opening it to check that everything was correct. Perfect, Mom. Thank you so much. You're going to adapt to the facility very quickly, you'll see. Linda stood up and gave me a quick hug. Mom, you'll be so much better cared for. You won't have to worry about anything anymore. Michael was the last to approach. His hug was longer, more sincere. I love you, Mom, he murmured in my ear. I love you too, sweetie, I replied, patting my youngest son's back as I had when he was little and had nightmares. Robert put the folder in his briefcase and closed the latches with a metallic click that I felt was the sound of a prison cell closing. Well, Mom, we'll be here early on Saturday with the moving company. Just pack the essentials, okay? There's not much space for personal things at the facility. I nodded. Can I bring some photographs? Of course, Linda said, but only a few. Maybe the most important ones. I looked around my living room at all the photographs documenting a lifetime. How could I choose which ones were the most important? The picture of my wedding? The pictures of when my children were born? The graduations? The birthdays? The family Christmases? And my books? Robert sighed. Mom, there's a library at the facility. You don't need to bring all your books. I looked at my small personal library, full of novels I had read and reread, cookbooks I had used for decades, history books Charles had given me on different anniversaries. Each book had a story, a memory associated with it. And my grandmother's china? Linda shook her head. You won't need china, Mom. All the food is served in the main dining room. The porcelain china that had belonged to my mother, that had been passed down from generation to generation, that I had used for every special dinner for 30 years. And the piano? Silence was the answer. The old upright piano where I had learned to play as a young girl, where I had taught my children their first musical notes, where I still played when I felt lonely. Robert cleared his throat. Mom, we have to be practical. The room at the facility is small, just the essentials. I wondered what they considered essential from a life of 73 years. When can I go see the facility? The three of them exchanged glances again. Mom, Linda said carefully, it's all arranged. You move in directly on Saturday. Without seeing it first? We've already seen it, Robert said. It's very nice, you'll like it. I felt a new wave of outrage. Not only had they decided to send me to a facility without consulting me, but they weren't even going to let me see the place before I moved. And what if I don't like it when I get there? You'll like it, Linda insisted. It has very nice gardens, and there are activities every day. Music therapists come. There are craft classes. I listened to the description as if Linda were talking about a summer camp for children, not a place where I would spend the rest of my life. Michael approached me again. Mom, we'll visit you every week. You won't be alone. Every week? I knew that was a promise they couldn't keep. Robert worked 60 hours a week. Linda traveled constantly for work, and Michael lived on the other side of the city. Well, as often as we can, Michael corrected, confirming my suspicions. Robert checked his watch once more. Well, Mom, we have to go. Robert Jr. has a soccer game at 6. I realized that even in this moment, in this conversation that would change my life forever, my children had more important things to do. I walked them to the door. One by one, they said goodbye to me with kisses and hugs that felt like final farewells. Remember, Mom, Robert said before leaving, just pack the essentials. And don't worry about cleaning the apartment. We'll take care of everything afterward. After what? After you move. We have to get it ready to sell. I nodded, feeling each word was like another nail in the coffin of my former life. When the door closed, I stood in the doorway for several minutes. The apartment felt different now, as if it no longer completely belonged to me, as if it were just a temporary place I was passing through. I walked slowly to my favorite chair and sat down. The silence of the house felt deeper than before. It was the silence of a life that was coming to an end, not by death, but by the decision of others. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine what my life would be like in a week. I would wake up in a room I didn't know, surrounded by people I didn't know, following routines that others had established for me. No more coffee made my way in my own kitchen. No more sitting in my favorite chair to watch the evening news. No more watering the plants in the small window garden. No more listening to the familiar sounds of the building that had been the soundtrack of the last 30 years of my life. I got up and walked to the window. On the street, life continued its normal course. Children played in the park across the street. Mothers pushed strollers. Workers returned home after a long day. Everything seemed normal, but for me, everything had changed. I went to the phone and dialed the number of my younger sister, Hope, who lived in another city. "Eleanor, how are you, sister?" "Hope," I was surprised to hear my own voice break. "I need to tell you something." For the next hour, I told my sister everything that had happened. Hope listened in silence, making occasional exclamations of surprise and indignation. "And you signed the papers?" Hope asked when I finished my story. "Yes," I said. "I signed them." "Eleanor, I can't believe your children would do that, without consulting you, without even taking you to see the place. I find it hard to believe too," I admitted, "but it's done now." "No, sister, it's not done. You can still change your mind. You can tell them you're not going." I sighed. "And then what? Live knowing my own children think I'm a burden, knowing they're worried about me all the time?" "Eleanor, you are not a burden. You are an independent woman who has taken care of herself for 73 years. But they don't see it that way. Then they are wrong." I fell silent, considering my sister's words. "Hope, do you think I'm being stubborn? That maybe they're right and I should be in a place where I'm cared for? Eleanor, do you feel like you need to be taken care of?" I considered the question honestly. No. I feel perfectly capable of taking care of myself. Yes, I fell once. Yes, I forgot to turn off the gas once. But those are things that can happen to anyone at any age. Then trust your own judgment. After hanging up with my sister, I sat at the dining table where the papers had been just a few minutes before. I thought about the words I had written next to my signature on each document. Words my children hadn't read. Words they might never read until it was too late. I went to my room and started taking a few things out of the closet. If I was moving on Saturday, I had to start deciding what to take with me. But as I held each object, each piece of clothing, each photograph, I realized I wasn't packing for a new life. I was packing for a farewell. I took the letter from Charles that I had read that morning and read it again. Don't let anyone, not even them, decide for you what is best for your life. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my purse. Then, I picked up the phone again and dialed a number I had memorized years ago but had never used. "Herrera and Associates Law Firm. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I need to speak with Mr. Herrera, please. May I ask what this is regarding?" I took a deep breath. "It's about some documents I signed this afternoon, and I believe I need to review them with an attorney. One moment, please." While I waited, I looked around my apartment one more time. Maybe my children were right, and I couldn't live alone anymore. Maybe I was stubborn and proud. Maybe I should be grateful that they cared about me, but maybe I also had the right to decide for myself how I wanted to live the rest of my life. "Ma'am, Mr. Herrera can see you first thing in the morning if it's urgent." I looked at the clock. I still had 5 days until Saturday. 5 days to decide if I was going to passively accept the decision others had made for me, or if I was going to fight to maintain control over my own life. "Yes," I said with a firm voice. "It is very urgent. I will be there early tomorrow." When I hung up the phone, I felt different. For the first time since Robert's call that morning, I felt that maybe I wasn't completely powerless in this situation. I went to the kitchen and made myself a cup of tea using my grandmother's porcelain china that Linda said I couldn't take to the facility. As I sipped the tea in the quiet of my home, I began to plan what I would say to Mr. Herrera the next day. Because if I had learned anything in 73 years of life, it was that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. And as the sun set over the city, Eleanor Rodriguez prepared for the most important fight of her life. The fight to maintain her dignity and her right to decide her own destiny. The apartment filled with the shadows of dusk, but for the first time all day, I did not feel afraid of the approaching darkness. I finished my tea and carefully washed the porcelain cup, drying it with the same care I had put into every domestic gesture for decades. As I put the china away, I realized these might be my last days performing these simple yet meaningful rituals in my own kitchen. The night fell on the apartment with that particular stillness of a Sunday. I turned on only one lamp in the living room, creating a circle of warm light around my favorite chair. I sat with a blanket over my legs, the same one I had knitted during Charles's last winter, and reflected on the day's events. My hands automatically found the phone. Without thinking too much, I dialed Robert's number. "Mom, is everything okay?" My son's voice sounded surprised. It wasn't usual for me to call at night. "Yes, Robert. I wanted to thank you for worrying about me." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Mom, you don't have to thank us for anything. We just want what's best for you." I know, my son. I know. I closed my eyes. Robert, can I ask you a question? Sure, Mom. Are you happy? The question seemed to surprise him. Am I happy? Yes, Mom. I have my family, my job, my house. That's not what I asked. I asked if you were happy. Robert was quiet for a moment. Mom, what is this about? I just want to know if my oldest son, the boy who used to run to me when he had nightmares, the young man who cried in my arms when he wasn't accepted into his first-choice university, if that man is happy with the life he has. Mom, Robert's voice broke slightly. I'm fine. We're all fine. Being fine isn't the same as being happy, Robert. I heard a deep sigh on the other end of the line. Do you know what made me happy when you were little? I continued. Seeing your face when you came home from school and told me everything you had learned that day. Watching you help your younger siblings with their homework. Seeing your face light up when you achieved something new. Mom, why are you telling me this? Because today, when you came to my house, I didn't see any of that light in your eyes. I saw a man fulfilling an obligation, and I wonder if you've lost that ability to be happy, or if you've just put it on pause. Robert didn't respond immediately. Happiness doesn't come from doing what others expect you to do, I continued. It comes from doing what you know in your heart is right. Mom, what we did today is right. Is it what's best for you, or is it what's easiest for you all? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Mom, it's not fair for you to say that. Robert, I've known you since you were the size of my hand. I know when you're doing something because it's right, and when you're doing it because you feel obligated. I heard background noise. The television, my grandchildren's voices, the normal life of a family on a Sunday night. Mom, I have to go. The kids have school tomorrow. Okay, sweetie. Just think about what we talked about, okay? I love you, Mom. I love you too, Robert. Always. After hanging up, I sat in the dim light for a long time. The streetlights filtered through the curtains, creating familiar patterns on the walls I had looked at for 30 years. I got up and walked to my room. There, in my nightstand drawer, I kept a journal I had started after Charles's death. I didn't write every day, only when I felt I needed to process something important. I opened the notebook to a blank page and began to write. Sunday, April 6th. Today my children came to tell me I have to leave my home. They say it's for my own good, that I can no longer take care of myself. I signed the papers they brought, but I don't think they read what I wrote next to my signature. I have spent my whole life making difficult decisions. I decided to marry young. I decided to have children when Charles and I could barely support ourselves. I decided to work when it was necessary. I decided to care for Charles at home during his illness instead of taking him to a hospital. I made all those decisions with love, but also with the certainty that they were my decisions to make. Today, for the first time in my life, someone else decided for me. And those people were my own children. I don't know if what I did by signing those papers was right. I don't know if I should fight this decision or accept it gracefully. What I do know is that tomorrow I'm going to seek help to understand exactly what I signed. Charles, if you can hear me from wherever you are, I need your wisdom. What would you do in my place? I closed the journal and put it back in the drawer. Then I got ready for bed, but sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw images of an unknown room, of strange faces, of routines imposed by others. Around midnight, I got up and walked to my living room window. The city at night stretched out before me, millions of lights representing millions of lives. I wondered how many of those people were sleeping in places where they really wanted to be, and how many were in places where others had decided they should be. The building was silent. The Martinez family next door were probably asleep. He had to get up early for work. Mrs. Lopez, from the floor above, would be preparing her nightly arthritis medication. The young student in the apartment below would be awake studying, as he did every night. They all had their own lives, their own routines, their own decisions to make each day. They were all masters of their own destinies. I returned to my bed and finally managed to fall asleep, but my dreams were filled with confusing images, suitcases I couldn't finish packing, rooms that changed shape every time I looked at them, voices calling me that I couldn't identify. I woke up before dawn, as I had for the last 50 years. But this time, opening my eyes in the familiar dimness of my room, I felt as if I were waking up in my home for the last time. I got up slowly and went to the kitchen to prepare my morning coffee. While waiting for the water to boil, I looked out the window at the brightening sky. It was Monday. In 5 days, if everything went according to my children's plans, I would be waking up in a completely different place. But as I poured the coffee into my favorite mug, Eleanor Rodriguez felt something she hadn't felt since yesterday's visit. Determination. I had an appointment with Mr. Herrera in a few hours. And after that appointment, I would finally know if the words I had written next to my signature had any legal power, or if I had forever lost control over my own life. I sat in my favorite chair with my coffee, watching the sunrise through the curtains I had chosen and installed myself years ago. No matter what happened in the next few days, this moment belonged completely to me, and for now, that had to be enough. The light of the new day slowly filtered through the window, illuminating the face of a woman who had lived 73 years, making her own decisions, and who was not ready to stop now. Saturday arrived, and with it, the moving truck. Robert arrived with Swiss punctuality, briefcase in hand, and his cell phone buzzing non-stop. Linda arrived a few minutes later, checking a list on her tablet. Michael got out of the car with tired eyes and a thermos of coffee in his hand. They all expected to find me ready, with my suitcase by the door, resigned and docile. But the door was locked, and I wasn't answering the bell. Robert knocked insistently. "Mom, open up, we're here." Silence. He finally found the spare key under the flower pot, just where I always told them not to leave it. They opened the door, and the apartment was empty. On the dining table, right in the spot where I had signed the papers, was a sealed envelope with their 3 names written on it: Robert, Linda, and Michael. Robert opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a letter, written in the same neat, determined handwriting they had known since they were children. "Dear children, yes, I signed the papers, but I also signed something else. I voided everything with my attorney on Monday morning. None of those documents are valid. Not the authorization for the nursing home, nor the power of attorney to sell this apartment. This house is mine, and it will remain so until the day I decide otherwise. I have spent the last few days remembering who I am, remembering the woman who knitted while waiting for you to come home from school, the one who held back tears when you fell for the first time, the one who never gave up, not even when life was unfair. That woman is still alive, and she is not going to let her right to decide be taken from her. I didn't leave out of cowardice. I left to remind myself, and you, that I was not born for others to make my decisions for me. I am fine. I am staying with Hope for a few days, but I will be back. I will return to my home. You are not invited to decide when or how. I don't need you to take care of me. I need you to respect me. With love, Mom." Robert slowly lowered the letter. No one said a word. Linda collapsed into a chair, in shock. Michael smiled. For the first time in a long time, he smiled with pride. "I knew it," he whispered. "I knew she wouldn't let us push her around like that." Robert looked around. The house still smelled of coffee and history, of determination, of Eleanor Rodriguez, and in that moment, the 3 of them knew they hadn't lost their mother. They had underestimated a lioness, a woman who, at 73, stood up to the world with nothing more than a cup of coffee in her hand and dignity in her heart. And that was the last time anyone tried to decide for Eleanor Rodriguez. Because that Saturday, instead of starting a new life in a stranger's home, Eleanor wrote the first line of the most powerful chapter of all, the chapter of her freedom.